Sounds good.
Okay, we are good.
All right. Hello, everyone. So welcome to our first full ISSessions virtual meeting. I know we had like a bit of a mini one last week just to test things out with the news. But today we're just going to, make it happen, go live in this special situation. So we're just going to, try to make the best of the situation that we're in. But honestly, like, if I look at what's kind of coming this meeting, you're going to see it's going to be really fun because we can do a lot of cool stuff online moving forward. So as usual, I'll start off by, giving you some announcements. Then we'll do the news. Then Costa Cavitas is going to be doing makings of a home lab. So I'm personally really excited for that. Then we're going to do for about like 10 to 15 minutes InfoSec trivia. And just so you know, play because you made the questions. And then after InfoSec trivia, we're going to do a Jackbox party. So this is just meant to be really fun. Like my goal is maybe every single meeting while we're kind of in the situation is to try as much as possible to inject just an element of like non-InfoSec, just something that really fun, not related that we can sort of do together. And that's the idea of Jackbox. Okay. So that's kind of the walkthrough. I wanted to talk a little bit about, the situation that we're in and sort of how it applies to our context at Sheridan or at Seneca, really in school in general or whatever school you're from. So, right now I realize that there are a lot of reasons to be sort of stressed out. And let me sort of, not a lot of people sort of talk about this, so I'm just going to sort of share my experience and maybe just comment on it a little bit and tell you what I've heard from other people. So, I used to be somebody who worked from, a cafe, maybe like 7 to 8 hours a day, right? I just sit in a Starbucks or like a coffee culture or whatever, and I sit there. And now I have to go home and work. And to be honest, at home I don't even have like a desk. Like I just made something like a makeshift desk just for this meeting. We'd worked the ISSessions team, right, for 8 months to create the ISSessions CTF, and then we had 3 workshops that were actually going to come in April, and unfortunately we had to postpone all of those. I'm worried about my co-op. I'm worried about, finishing all my homework. There's so many assignments right now. I'm worried about people at home. I got to go get the groceries. I don't want my parents to be going outside, right? Because there's a higher risk for them. And one thing that I'm to worry about all the people that are there as well, right? So they obviously don't have a lot of medical equipment. And so that's something that I kind of have to keep an eye on. From those things, just speaking with a lot of people, I understand that there are a lot of students that are sort of stressed out right now. And really 2 things sort of float to the top, and there are so many assignments right now, and everybody who is recruiting for co-op has a lot of co-op concerns. So for the first item, the only thing that I can say is you really just have to sort of pace yourself, and just remember it is a college policy right now that there are no late penalties, right? And if a teacher tells you otherwise, you can go to the dean or whatever and you can contest it. Okay. Because, if I show you my schedule right now, I mean, it's a little bit crazy. And, that's just part of moving to online. Maybe some teachers don't really realize that, this is a big change, or they're trying to sort of make sure that they cover those 100%, 100% of the learning outcomes. So just make sure, at the end of the day, what matters is your mental health. What matters is your family, and just pace yourself. Continue to focus on your education, but you don't need to kill yourself, right? Go, take rest. Take time to rest. Take time to talk to your family. It's important to do that right now. The other thing is that there's a lot of co-op concerns, and I sort of understand that, and it might feel like there's really nothing that you can do, but just remember that the co-op office is there. So if there is a co-op concern, you can always go to them and you can always ask them questions. But also remember that even if you don't end up finding a co-op for the next 4 months, the college has already said that you can still continue your academic term, and that somehow they'll be able to accommodate you. Okay, so don't worry about those things right now. What you should be worrying about is your family and just finishing the semester to the best of your ability. Okay, so before I continue, I'm just going to stop there and ask if any of the other presenters would like to add anything to that.
I guess I'll just add that, I mean, obviously a lot of the schools' support services, while not in person, are still there and available. So if anybody wants to avail themselves of like the counseling or anything like that, you can still reach out and contact them for any other kind of support, as well as obviously talking to your faculty and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So just to continue on with that, there are a lot of sort of ways to I made a post, I think maybe a week ago or a week and a half ago, about just how sort of you can manage the stress. And, I said things like, limit your daily dose of the news. If you feel like there's nothing to do, maybe start a project, explore new things, right? Like music, art, books, video games, that kind of stuff. One thing that I did want to focus on, though, is taking a leadership role. So unfortunately, because we're in a quarantine situation, there are a lot of people that are disadvantaged right now. And if you think about sort of what people are thinking about right now, they're not thinking about donating money, right? So they're not thinking about, so if they were donating money before, they're probably not thinking about that right now, or they're trying to sort of maybe hoard their money because of the anxiety that's just in the air. So what I wanted to do was to try, maybe as ISSessions, to think of something that we can do to maybe some sort of fundraiser, and then we can donate the money sort of in the name of ISSessions. I think that would be a really cool idea. To be honest with you, I don't know what it is that we want to do, but I just sort of wanted to pitch it right now and sort of get ideas from people about what they would like to see. Personally, I am 100% committed to embarrassing myself. If you want me to throw a pie in my face or whatever, I'm totally good with that. So just tell me what idea you want me to do, and I can do it. Maybe we can throw a pie in Rick's face. He already jumped in water like a few weeks ago, so I'm sure it wouldn't be unprecedented.
You have to prefix that with really cold water if you're going to say it. Just jumping in water doesn't describe the awfulness of that experience.
Don't undermine his pain.
Yeah.
All right. I'm feeling really weird right now, by the way, because I've never done a stream before, and it's just like I'm talking in my room, and I have no idea what people are thinking right now. It's very scary, but it's okay. We'll keep going. Sorry, CK, do you want to say something?
No, that's good.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, just the last thing that I sort of want to leave you off with is that, remember, this is sort of one moment in time. Things will get better. And if you need help with anything, I'm happy to talk. Any of the ISSessions exec would also be happy to talk. Reach out to us, whatever we can help you with. We'd be really happy to do it. Okay. And please let me know about sort of what fundraising ideas you come up with, as long as it's something funny or whatever. I'm good with it. Whatever gets you engaged, I'm happy to do it. All right, so that's it for me. So now I am going to pass it on to Nick and Adam for the news roundup.
Thank you. Okay, so Adam, you're up.
Sure. So basically, because of this whole situation, the World Health Organization has been both targeted, and also there's been a huge spike in impersonations of the World Health Organization. So it's kind of weird not having the YouTube delay, but yeah, basically, like researchers have been seeing that groups such as APT Dark Hotel in this article they mentioned is suspected of attempting to compromise the World Health Organization. Dark Hotel has been covered by ISSessions, and with the Wi-Fi zero day, and with the Wi-Fi. No, it is. You're right, Luai. It is kind of weird talking to yourself sometimes. So yeah, moving on.
You're good? Okay. So the next one I wanted to highlight was, I guess AMD kind of reported that they'd had some graphics or some data stolen related to one of their lines of graphics processors, or a couple blueprints or something like that. And they'd basically been posted on GitHub, so they had to send DMCA requests to have that stuff taken down, because obviously it's like private corporate IP. Someone did manage to grab a screenshot of the GitHub repo before it was taken down. What you can see is that the documents were written in Verilog, which is what this VLIB is. And that's like a language you'd use to program things like FPGAs and other hardware, but it can then be used to translate and end up spinning up silicon. And people more familiar with this stuff have said that these documents look like they were like test code and much of stuff like that. They also think that the attacker might have additional documents that they haven't yet dumped on the internet. That was just kind of an interesting case of somebody like dropping this stuff onto GitHub. Yeah.
There was something similar with one of the banks, I believe, also accidentally disclosing or making available an internal repo.
Yeah, definitely.
So
cool. All right, you're up, man.
So Microsoft has paused non-essential updates as of May. So still a little bit times away. So what's going to be affected are CND updates. So Patch Tuesday releases will still be rolled out, as those are typically security patches. This is mainly to kind of follow the trend of what we've been seeing of vendors and technology companies minimizing the amount of deployments that they have, just to take the load off while people are still adjusting to everyone working at home. So, yep.
Cool. Tupperware.com was basically hosting credit card stealing malware on their site. We've covered a lot of the credit card stealing malware issues recently. This is just another one. Yep, just kind of funny that it was Tupperware.com. Although they do have a good screenshot here, actually. This was from Malwarebytes, who found this, showing this was the payment card form that people were shown. And what they're showing here is a highlight of the HTML source that shows the entire credit card form was a fake one injected into an iframe tag that laid itself over top of the original payment form. So they can really make these things look pretty legit, and it's kind of buried down in one little page element. Yeah, so that was kind of interesting.
So Microsoft has disclosed a new Windows vulnerability that has been observed to be actively exploited. They did point out that this has been limited. This vulnerability has been used in a limited fashion that are being highly targeted. Basically, the exploit allows for remote code execution. And basically, this vulnerability is affecting all versions of Windows. The affected component has been tracked down to Adobe Type Manager library. So this essentially helps Windows render fonts. So how to exploit this vulnerability is an attacker can send a carefully crafted document with the vulnerability in it. And all it takes is for the user to open the document. So Windows renders the font, and that's allows the attacker to run remote code. So they mentioned that this is used even within Microsoft's preview. So quite scary. This has been listed as a critical vulnerability. Microsoft hasn't released a patch as of yet, but it's suspected that they will release a fix for this in the upcoming Patch Tuesday.
Cool. And I guess this was a paste of some of that, but it's not up anymore. So Memcache had a bit of a bug. Actually, some people were talking about it in the Discord, that based on a Shodan search is likely available in about 83,000 public-facing Memcache servers. I mean, you shouldn't have your Memcache database exposed to the internet anyways. It's meant to be like a caching server, caching database, to help speed up applications, so it doesn't really need to be exposed. Part of the drama around this one, though, is that this user, ISSJI, basically put the disclosure in like the GitHub bug report that immediately makes it public. And people always kind of freak out when someone just sort of drops a public vulnerability like that without really contacting the developers beforehand. I mean, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But yeah. So anyways, that was it. It was mostly a denial of service, though. I don't know if it's a full-blown code execution. I think it's just a DOS. Yeah, it just says a crash.
And then, so there's been so HP warns of a new bug that kills SSD drives after 40,000 hours. So Hewlett Packard Enterprise Division is warning customers of this reliability issues for certain iSCSI SSD drives. So iSCSI is basically like the enterprise equivalent of like SATA. You can actually plug in your SATA cable into an iSCSI, but you will SCSI. The difference between the two connectors is that SCSI is bidirectional instead of SATA, which data can only transmit in one direction. So the bug lies in the firmware, which leads to drive failure at around a similar time frame. So that works out to about 4 years, 26 days, and a couple hours, and etc. So this is kind of quite interesting because many servers they'll be in arrays with redundancy, so one or two drives may fail, and the array will still remain operational without data loss. But because of this bug, the risk is that the whole array could fail in a very similar time frame before a technician can, for example, put in a new SSD, and so there's a risk of data failure here. So this isn't this firmware bug isn't specific to HP. SanDisk and Dell have also had to push out new firmware to deal with a similar reliability issue. So HP is expecting for this to start impacting customers come October. So there's quite a bit of lead time, but with the whole situations that's been happening, we'll see whether they'll be able to roll out those updates in time.
Cool. Next one, WHO, someone there suggested, hey, should we start using people's phones to track them if they've like been traveling, and then to determine if they're actually self-isolating and stuff when they get home? Obviously, a lot of people take issue with that from a privacy perspective. An interesting time, because that's bumping up against a public health argument. Just wanted to point that out because like a few days before that, another country already said like, yeah, we're going to start doing that. We're basically going to use our like our spy powers to basically track phones and find out who has recently returned from travel and is not staying isolated like they're supposed to. So it's definitely an interesting time, because normally we're used to like privacy bumping up against security, but right now it's more like privacy is starting to conflict or at least kind of bump up against public health concerns, which is a little bit different than what we normally see in InfoSec.
And people point out that once the cat is out of the bag, it's hard to roll back. So
yeah, sure. Your turn.
Oh, sorry. I don't see which one is this. Is this the?
It's the COVID-19 Spurs facial recognition.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, right, because
so yeah, so
behind, right?
yeah. It's been like tripping me up this whole time. So in any case, so jumping off of what Nick mentioned, so governments have been looking for ways to be able to track infections quickly and kind of notify people to self quarantine if they may have been near someone that's been infected. Even here in Ontario, this week, like Doug Ford made a comment to a journalist about identifying people not self-quarantining by tracking cell phones, but he quickly retracted it and saying it like, we're just kidding. Like, this is just an idea that's floating around. We're not going to implement this. So at least for now. So facial recognition, the appeal of facial recognition technology is it can be it's fast to deploy, and also the main selling point is it's zero contact for biometric authentication. So, for example, in the article mentions in New York's police department, where fingerprint readers are used, they're no longer using the fingerprint readers because to limit physical contact. So that's where facial recognition kind of draws the appeal. And so, yeah, so like Nick mentioned, like data collection, like there's a lot of privacy concerns in regards to data collection, storage, user consent, and surveillance. But we have seen interesting adoptions of this, such as some companies have paired facial recognition with temperature sensors so that they can monitor, detect faces, and then check their temperature to see whether they may be sick. So there have been some interesting use cases of this.
One that's near and dear to probably a lot of our hearts, the beer store was the victim of what they are claiming is a cyber attack. So as a result, a lot of the beer stores have gone to cash-only business temporarily. I know this for a fact. I went there this afternoon and had to pay cash for beer. And however, they think that the attack was actually just pointed at their e-commerce site, which I'm going to be honest, I just found out that you can like prepay for your beer and just go to the beer store and pick it up. I did not even know that was a thing, but apparently you could do that, and that the payment system on that kind of got popped. So right now, again, they're just backing off. They're not allowing that service, and they're only accepting cash payments at stores for the time being. So that's your Canadian content portion of the news.
I had no idea that I could do that.
Right? So useful.
I know, exactly. Yes. So malware, so have you guys been feeling like you've been missing some updates in your life? Well, no more, because a hacking group has been compromising WordPress sites, which isn't out of the ordinary. But what they've been doing with the compromised WordPress sites is, so they've been, once a user navigated to a compromised WordPress site, they've been redirecting users to a fake Chrome download page. So if you scroll down, I believe you'll see like what that looks like there. And so actually, and also the group responsible for being carried for this type of attacks has been attributed to others, because the payload that they've been dropping for this fake Chrome uploader has been used in a previous campaign. And they're also using some geolocation browser detection to target certain regions and specific web browsers, in this case Chrome. So if anyone attended Nick Lee's C2 workshop, you kind of have an idea as to how someone could do something like this. So
crazy. That was a really convincing looking update page. Like, I would probably click on something like that. Pointing out one from one of our alumni, John Simpson, who does work with the Zero Day Initiative at Trend Micro, published some findings for one of their CVEs, which is 2020-0729, that has to do with remote code execution capabilities in Microsoft.lnk files. If you don't know what an LNK file is, it's a shortcut. The article goes on to describe in deep technical detail a lot of the structure of how link files work, but then gets into the actual vulnerability and how it works and can allow for remote code execution. It basically boils down to a feature that I sure as hell didn't know about, which is you can actually make a shortcut based off of a like Windows search. Like when you do a search inside Windows, you can save that. There's kind of a picture here in the article. So you can drag this part out and make a shortcut of that document search on your desktop. And it has to do with how that process executes. There's a bit of an issue there where someone can kind of compromise that to launch code. It's kind of a cool article, really heavy on the technical detail. But if that, like that kind of low level activity is something you want to get into, I would definitely recommend giving this a thorough read through. And next one.
So Azure appears to be full. So within the UK, there appears to be some capacity issues as customers are not able to create resources as reliably. So they've observed that this affects VMs and Azure functions. And this is, the article mentioned that this is specific to UK Azure. And so, yeah, so as like we've seen, like for example, Netflix throttle down the streaming quality because they've said that there's been such an increase in network activity. So this is kind of the question of cloud. If everyone needs to up their resources, how much are the cloud providers actually having extra capacity for to be able to scale up to demand? So
yeah, I actually heard
unfortunately, go ahead.
The telcos, like the Canadian telcos, were actually trying to contact some of the really popular video streaming services, because that's what chews up the majority of the world's bandwidth, is like Netflix and YouTube. And they were asking them to do exactly that, to like turn down the default bitrate or to block the HD altogether.
Yeah, so they've been seeing that network traffic from. I read somewhere that network traffic used to spike around 9 p.m. to 12 p.m., but now they're seeing that network traffic is spiking from 12 p.m. all the way to the evening. So yeah, so the network activity, high network load is over a longer period of time as well. Yeah. So
another one that not a lot of people think about actually is stuff like Call of Duty. Like older, really popular network games have really bad, inefficient network code, and it actually generates a lot more bandwidth than people recognize. It causes a lot of latency and stuff too. Yeah. So the next one, a thing that people have been talking about for years, but nobody's ever actually tried. A cybercrime group actually mailed a bunch of malicious USB dongles to a few people at a few companies. So this actually used that bad USB exploit that people talk about a lot, where you basically reprogram a USB stick to behave like a human interface or HID device, so that when you insert it, it basically executes a ton of keystrokes really quickly, faster than someone can even see or recognize or respond to. And it sounds like it was targeted at people in financial positions at companies. They sent them a USB stick in the mail saying, hey, Best Buy is giving you a free $50 gift card. You can spend it on any of the products listed in this USB stick. And luckily, the person who received this at one large company actually had security training and didn't plug it in and sent it or gave it to their security team, which is fascinating. I mean, I love to hear when training actually works like that, so that's good. Anyways, just crazy to know that people are actually trying this now, because again, people have been talking about this for ages.
Yeah, it looks like, and there's been an increasing spike of attacks, so it looks like attackers are just as bored as we are. So totally. I guess they're just better at being more productive than I guess myself.
Yeah.
So Mozilla is going to temporarily re-enable TLS version 1 and 1.1. So the reason why, so Firefox announced that it was going to drop support of those TLS versions actually this month in March, but because a lot of software vendors, like I've mentioned, they've been delaying major releases. Firefox is doing the same, and they're actually pushing back the TLS change. So what this would have affected was, for example, if you see your lock icon, currently it just checks if HTTPS is enabled, then it'll show you the lock icon. But if, for example, what they wanted to change was that lock icon would no longer be shown as secure if if a website was using a weak TLS certificate. So they wanted people to upgrade their certificate. And so, yeah.
All right. Yeah, interesting. This one, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. I just wanted to make you all aware of this feature that exists in the Respondus lockdown browser, should it ever become a part of your life. While I can't necessarily advocate for strong reaction and stuff, I want people to know that there is a feature in Respondus called the monitor, which basically requires students to enable a webcam and then record their surroundings and then record themselves while they take a test using the lockdown browser. They claim it uses AI to basically determine if people are cheating. There are so many privacy issues with this, but just because of my role and what I do, it would be difficult for me to slam this really hard on a publicly available recording, but I would hope that all of you know my stance on this. Also, what happens if you just happen to have your health card taped to your monitor? Oops, that's healthcare info, can't store it now, right? I mean, just a thought. Anyways,
Yeah.
moving on.
And I have seen for my sibling, actually, when she was writing, she had to write an exam online, and they actually did have that webcam running in the background. Someone was monitoring it in person. So
yeah, and some of the certs do it too. Like I think OSCP does it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Anyways, last article.
So, yep. So the Tor project pushed out a new release this Tuesday. So the release contained a permanent fix for a bug that could allow someone to de-anonymize a website to de-anonymize users. So how this worked is on the safest security level, that's supposed to be when you're like fully anonymous but they enable JavaScript code to run by default, and so they've seen that if you write certain JavaScript code, you could actually leak fingerprint the user or leak the user's real location. So basically, what they did was they just disabled JavaScript for non-HTTPS sites while browsing on the safest level. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's it for the news. So coming up next, we have our project done for the evening. So just give us a couple of seconds while we wait for the stream to catch up, and we switch over to our guest speaker.
All right, I'm just gonna mute myself in Discord and then mute myself in the OBS. Making of a home lab. Is everything good, Nick? Don't see the video. Is video pick up now? You want me to kill the stream and put it back up? Yeah, we're working on it in chat, guys.
Yep. I have this theme set up the way it was before, but I have the Discord audio muted. So that's something to.
The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as some of one gently rapping at my chamber door. To some visitor I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dream, while I pondered, weak and weary. Oh. Sounds good.
We did it.
Okay. All right. Okay. I guess we'll. I'll say next change the slide. Okay. Sure thing. Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We rehearsed this earlier, but apparently something went wrong since then. This is just gonna be like a really short project about home labs and stuff, because I hear a lot of people want to make them and maybe they don't know how, or they don't know how to get started. So let's hop to the next slide. So a little about me. My name is Costa. I'm a student at Seneca College. I used to be the president of the CTF club over there. And I'm just generally interested in IT stuff. I like talking about it. My interests include threat hunting, digital forensics, incident response, security engineering, system administration, stuff like that. And I like playing Dota 2, and you're going to see that there's Dota 2 themed slides all across this presentation. Let's hop to the next slide. Some of you might be asking yourself, what is a home lab? And just because the best definition I could find on the internet was it's a safe place for you to experiment with IT stuff. That could be like physical, like servers and network equipment and stuff like that, or it could just be software. And it's a good place to learn hard IT skills, especially if you're one of those people who likes to do project-based learning. I don't learn very well with books. So for me, yeah, thanks. I think it's cool to set stuff up, especially if you can use it for yourself at home, which we'll cover in the next slide. If you can switch, please. So not all home labs look like this. Like, this is kind of over the top, obviously. Way too expensive. And you'll see even in the next slide, we have like a rack mount server, or like a rack with a bunch of servers and stuff. And even that's a little expensive, over the top. Not very, it's a typical setup, but it's not very, it's not super common, I guess you could say. So if you're like me and you're on a budget and you want to do home lab stuff, in the next slide you'll see some examples of equipment that you can use to do that. Cheap stuff, depending on your price range and what you want to do. Optiplex 7020s are dirt cheap on eBay and Kijiji, Craigslist, whatever you want to use. A lot of schools are selling them off. Open WRT routers, because you do need a device that can handle VLANs or also have a flat network. So that TP-Link one is one of the more popular models for that capability. Intel NUCs, they're more expensive. They're pretty powerful though. Some people have them. And then we have the Raspberry Pi cluster, which is most of you guys already know about Raspberry Pis. Okay, you got a little ahead of me, Nick. It's okay. Software that you could use in your home lab. I just put a couple of examples here. Generally, you want a hypervisor of some sort. Some people swear by VMware ESXi. Some of the newer ones like XCP&G, which is an open source Zen server. I personally like Proxmox. You can always just use Linux and do KVM. Where was I? But in general, like the difference between those hypervisors, it's not that big. I personally use both VMware ESXi and Proxmox at home. XCP&G is very popular with managed service providers. And then in the networking side, pfSense is probably the de facto router, firewall, IDS solution. But I'm trying to work on VYOS. It's a good Linux software router. You can has a Cisco-like interface. If you ever had to take a Cisco class, you'll jump right in. Security Onion, it's really good at for IDS and network monitoring solution. Some people like that it's all in one box. Some people prefer to have the devices separate, so using pfSense and then having Elastic Stack set up on a different virtual machine. And then container services like LXC, which you can get on Proxmox. LXD is the equivalent on both Debian-based systems. And then Docker for microservices. Let's hop to the next slide. Here are some example uses. I pulled these from like Reddit. Most of the people who have their home lab, if you ask them what they use it for, they say VPN to connect into their home lab remotely. Media servers like Plex and MadSonic, Radar, Sonar. Game services, if you have like a Minecraft server, Counter-Strike, Team Fortress 2, etc. Learning new technologies should be higher up, but I can understand people don't want to talk about what they're learning necessarily all the time. A development environment, if you're in like a software development background, maybe you want to have a small infrastructure for you to deploy your application. And then some small, medium businesses, they use their home lab for backups. Let's hop to the next slide. What I use my home lab for is to do schoolwork, because I'm a student, obviously. But my personal server is a Dell Precision desktop workstation with it's like a Xeon 4-core 8-thread CPU and 16 gigs of RAM. It's not anything very fancy, but I run ESXi on it, and I can connect through VMware Workstation to it from school, and I'm using it right now as I'm working on my projects. And then my other server is running Proxmox. It's using a dual CPU build I bought on eBay. It's like a super micro motherboard. Extended ATX is very big. So it has like a huge extended ATX desktop case I bought from Kijiji. But all in all, for a 24 core, 48 thread server with 48 gigs of RAM, it is it's a pretty powerful machine. It didn't cost me very much. It cost me maybe, I want to say $400 total. And then the services that I have just for enjoyment, I run MB, it's a media server. AirSonic, it's like a music streaming service, sort of like Spotify. It's not very good, but I'm working on making it better. Pi-hole is a staple, I think, in all home labs, ad blocking at the DNS level as opposed to, parsing the web page and trying to block ads. And then I run both WireGuard and OpenVPN. OpenVPN is my failover. It's just an access server. It's just a free access server, which you might have seen in the C3X can only handle 2 clients at once. But it's just there just in case WireGuard for some reason fails. Maybe the service has to be restarted. And that's it. Next slide, please, Nick. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, I'll be in I think there's a questions chat now in the Discord that you can hop into. Or I don't know how Luwei wants to handle that. And then apparently there's a question on YouTube. Someone asking what's my MMR. I'm I think it's Legend 1. I haven't played in 3 weeks, 4 weeks now. How does WireGuard compare to OpenVPN?
So the questions chat is a voice channel. Do you want me?
Someone asking what's my MMR. Yeah, sure. I think it's Legend 1. So the question was, how does WireGuard compare to OpenVPN? I think WireGuard is just easier to use. I haven't noticed any significant difference in performance between the two. So is there a questions channel or? Yeah, sure. If people have questions in voice, I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Could I be able to ask another question?
Sure.
In regards to, 1 second. In regards to backup, have you used any like cloud services for like pushing your backups up to the cloud, or like separating between prod and your dev?
No, I don't have backups this time. I'm okay with losing whatever it is most.
Okay, thank
Not the best answer, but
you. Hey, I just switched to backup like a week ago.
I'm hearing an echo. Okay, I guess that was probably it for questions, but we can just hang out and talk now. If people want to talk about other things. How much RAM do you need for a home? Oh, I know this Ali M guy. Shoutouts to him. I think it all depends on what it is that you're doing. I mean, my personal server has only 16 gigs of RAM, and I'm running, I think, 7 virtual machines right now. So it all depends on what exactly it is that you want to do, right? I'm not running something very heavy.
When I used to have like a very cheap starter home lab that I got from high school, was one of the PCs they were throwing away. It literally started out with only 1 gigabyte of RAM. It was a Pentium 4 hyper-threaded. So you could really start like bare bones, like nothing, even like with like a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, like if Nick wants to go back to that slide, like those things I put in the slide there are pretty cheap. Aside from the Intel NUC, maybe is on the like a little pricier end, but everything else it's really cheap. I can get an Optiplex 7020 probably for like $60. That's a 4-core 8-thread system with 8 or 16 gigs of memory. You can buy DDR3 memory pretty cheap now. And I mean, we didn't even cover like Ryzen's exist. You can always build like a new Ryzen system, and DDR4 memory is going down as well. Other options, I mean, if you're one of the things I didn't talk about in this presentation that maybe I should have was old generation server hardware, right? But one of the drawbacks of that is the power consumption that goes with it. So like you could buy these like AMD Opteron CPUs and get like 32 cores, but you find out that they consume like a shitload of power, and you probably did not save money in the long run.
Costa, I know that you're, you have a strong interest in like threat hunting and blue teaming in general. How would the requirements change that you mentioned for something like a blue teaming or threat hunting lab?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Yeah. So for like so you mentioned this is sort of like a home lab, general technologies, but let's say I wanted to make sort of like a blue teaming lab or a threat hunting lab, something maybe with like Elasticsearch and Kibana and that kind of stuff. How would my hardware requirements change if I want to do something like that? Would I still have to would I still spend roughly the same amount of money, so like $400, or would I have to spend more in order to do that?
Well, I think for starters, like you can always there's a Vagrant image online detection lab. It's made by one of the security engineers at Netflix, and I think that's like a good place to get started. As far as like hardware goes, you can run that on a 4-core 8-thread 16 gigs of RAM type machine, because most of the stuff is It's pretty lightweight. But if you want to do network monitoring, you need you want some isolation. So you probably want a device that's or a wireless router at least with OpenWRT that can do VLANs, or else you'll start to see all of your traffic in your network, including your family members and stuff like that. Does that sort of cover?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And just a follow-up question, and maybe I'm asking you to reveal too much here, but I know you were sort of like the team lead for C3X last year. What kind of setup did you guys have to practice?
One of my what I did is I set up Elasticsearch environment, and I connected a Windows VM to it, and I ran a GitHub package called APT Simulator. It makes all kinds of bad traffic, or not bad traffic, but like all kinds of bad logs in your system. And I sent that to Elasticsearch, and then I made a script sort of so my friend Ali M could load that Elasticsearch index and expose it to his home lab, so people could practice at home. Aside from that, I mean, we did still a lot of talking and a lot of documentation. We made like APT29 notes on all the IOCs and stuff. I mean, we can talk about C3X. It doesn't
No, that's really cool.
Other C3X related things that you want to know about. It's no problem.
Sounds good. No, I like the idea of APT Simulator, though. That's a really
there's
cool way.
Better ones now. It's, like Atomic Red Team has had significant improvements since then.
Yeah, I looked into that, but I wasn't sure. It seemed complicated. It seemed like it's an entire, like you have to set up a web server and agents, and it seemed like a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, like one of the big things for me was our intrusion detection class that would have taught you about Kibana and Elasticsearch and sort of network monitoring in general happens after all the people who were in the C3X were around. So I really just wanted to give them, like, there was no legitimate activity on the on that Elasticsearch index. It was just all bad traffic. It was just like, here's that text file with a list of the activities, and I shuffled the order around, and I was like, find them. So, and then as people found them, I had them save in Trello, like a list board. I had people just save what it is they use to find that indicator of that event.
That's really awesome. Sounds super organized.
Yeah, well, when it was run by just me, I mean, it's pretty easy. Like, I just say, this is how we're gonna go, and people just follow. But it's not the best experience for some. Ali M asks in chat, I don't know why he keeps asking questions. He knows all the answers, but how can you make sure your lab is secure if you're leaving ports open on your network? I mean, I think it goes back to use case. Is there a reason why you're exposing that port to the internet? The only ports exposed on my end is VPN. It's OpenVPN and WireGuard. Everything else, can get to it after you connect, because I don't have an interest in letting other people access my network.
I have another question regarding how much storage do you need, and are there any performance requirements that you've encountered?
On my on the Proxmox, I have because we're running FreeNAS in a virtual machine. I have ZFS, which is like a software RAID type thing, and so that one has a lot of hard drives, and I think I want to say it's like 24 terabytes, even though I can just log into Proxmox and tell you exactly what it is.
Yeah, I've seen someone also do like a FreeNAS within Proxmox. How well has that worked? Just like out of curiosity.
Yeah, I mean it works really well. I haven't had to replace drives yet. I'm at 37 terabytes. So like in total, I have 48 terabytes of storage on the Proxmox. I mean, this is a shared server. Both me and my brother have been putting money into it, so that's a little over the top. But obviously, we need to store some media so we can access it with MB and with Mad Sonic, so you can stream music and video at home. Having said that, depending on what it is that you're doing, my personal server has a 1 terabyte hard drive. I ripped it out of a Bell. What's it called? One of those cable boxes, like DVR cable boxes. This just holds like some OVAs and VMDKs, and that's okay.
All right, thank you.
Like in general, it just comes down to what it is that you're doing, right? I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, I was just one of the so I run Proxmox as well. I'm not sure how best to set up like my mass storage array, because Proxmox supports different ones. So I've seen the FreeNAS option. I've been looking at like Ceph would be cool to play around with, but it requires 3 nodes and whatnot. So
yeah, like I've set up Ceph in a virtual environment before. I mean, Ceph is generally used for like almost like making a private cloud of sorts. Like it's good for VM migration. It's good for container migration, stuff like that.
yeah, it's just the amount of like the 3 node requirement is a bit much. But yeah, no, it's a cool technology for sure.
But yeah, like I mean, you could, if you wanted to, you probably want to set up Open vSwitch as well, so that when you migrate, your VM from one node to another, it can still exist in the same layer 2 domain as it was originally, using like GRE, VXLAN.
All right, is that it for questions, or do we have any more?
How often has your home lab crashed, if ever? I haven't put my home lab through like a lot of stress, so it hasn't crashed. Yeah, I mean it totally happens. Like your home lab, could crash. One of the things you want to look out for is having backups, or being willing to accept the risk that you have to go back and reconfigure that thing because it crashed. And I think like if you're using one of these hypervisors like Proxmox and ESXi, it's very unlikely that the hypervisor will crash, just the VM running whatever service. I don't know if that answers your question.
I can tell you from my point of view, where I've actually ran the ISSessions CTF dev environment on my home lab. My home lab right now is currently Ryzen 1700X with 8 cores, 16 threads. 64 gigabytes of RAM with a ton of storage that are all basically old hard drives. And I can tell you that it will crash when you're definitely doing very heavy modifications to it. The only time that I've had the host crash is when I was trying to enable PCI pass-through. But in terms of like the VMs themselves, if you configure something wrong in your own VM or like it hangs up, it's most likely the guest's fault, but it won't affect the other guest on the system. So
Yeah,
it's really
exactly.
it's really good on isolation.
But good on you for bringing up PCI pass-through. If you want to pass through physical devices to your VMs, like if you guys ever seen that Linus Tech Tip video where he does the 10 gamers, 1 CPU or whatever type of thing, definitely expect crashes, and I would stay away from VMware for that because VMware does have problems with the drivers sometimes when it comes to pass-through.
Okay, Costa, I think we're probably going to cap off the questions there.
Yes, let's play some
if
games.
that's okay with you.
And trivia.
Right.
There's
All
one
right.
last question in the question chat, though.
Oh, is there in the chat?
Oh, is there? Okay.
In like the YouTube again?
Discord.
No, in the Discord.
Which question?
Was dedicated home lab versus VMs on daily device.
Oh, I thought that was the... Okay. I mean, I run all my VMs when I can. I run my VMs on my home lab, and then I just connect. Like, let's say if we weren't under quarantine, I would I'd be at Seneca or something. I would connect using my VPN back to my home network, open workstation, and connect to my ESXi and run my VMs from there. But as a student, I mean, I do both. Sometimes I'll even run like I'll have a network built in ESXi, and I'll have Kali running on workstation on my gaming PC, and then I'll connect to it and do attacks and things like that. Okay, I think it's Kahoot time.
All right, let's have a Kahoot. Thank you so much, Costa. That was really good, and you answered a lot of interesting questions. So, and also, everyone should know that Costa basically filled in with a week's notice for someone else. So I appreciate him very much, and we should all appreciate him for doing such an awesome presentation in such a short time.
I made this presentation yesterday.
Nice.
Not the best advice, but you know, I'm very busy.
I mean, hey, it turned out pretty well. So maybe okay, presentation next week then?
No. It's too much work.
Okay, so let's move on to InfoSec trivia. So let me actually just walk everybody through how this is going to go. So first of all, I'm going to apologize for moving you through different channels. It's just that the different channels have different permissions on them, and that's sort of how we're managing things. So for trivia and Jackbox, we created 3 rooms, which are up in the stream channel category. So where you were before with, in the ISSessions channel. So essentially what we're going to do is, for the InfoSec trivia, we're going to move into that. I'm going to, you're going to have to join a Kahoot room. For those of you who have not done Kahoot before, Kahoot is essentially just like it's an online platform that allows us to do quizzes. And yes, Brandon, it is a Kahoot. So we're going to move in there. And then once you actually join the room, I'm going to share my screen. And then after that, so after we've done the InfoSec trivia, and then we move to the Jackbox, I'm going to be sharing my screen in Jackbox 1, and then Steffi's going to be sharing her screen in Jackbox 2. And for the Jackbox games, it's like super casual. Everyone can talk. Even in InfoSec trivia, everyone can talk, whatever. And we're just going to play some games until we sort of get bored of it. One thing you should know though, so for InfoSec Trivia, so again, go to the InfoSec Trivia voice channel. Then you can either play on a desktop. Okay, so if you're watching the stream right now, there should be a slide up, and you can either go on a desktop to kahoot.it, or you can download the Kahoot mobile app. Then I'm going to share this code with you through my video. So we're going to not really do anything on the stream anymore. I'm just going to be sharing my screen and doing all the games and stuff through there and the trivia through there. And then if you do win the trivia, and the trivia is really fun. Some of it is like serious InfoSec questions. Others are just fun questions. Some are just related to the club. You will get the InfoSec Inquisitor role on Discord, and people can ping you through that. So that's your sort of bragging rights or title that you get to win out of this. And then for Jackbox, basically the same thing, but you can either play on desktop at jackbox.tv, or you can download the Jackbox mobile app. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information. It's cool if you didn't get all of it. So now what we're all going to do is, it'll become clear in a second. But now what we're all going to do is we're going to move into the InfoSec Trivia stream. Okay. Okay, just waiting on a few more people.
It's a Kahoot.
It is a Kahoot. All right, so clearly we're giving instructions properly because everybody's moving really quickly. That's good. That's good. I'm going to take that as a win. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now so you can all watch my